Hello and welcome back to another Swift tutorial. My name is Janthielemann, and in this video you are going to learn about the differences between constants and variables, what optionals are, what type annotation is, as well as some of the best practices when it comes to variables and constants. Let's begin. If you already programmed in the past, you probably already know what a variable and a constant is. But if you are new to programming and Swift in general, let me explain them to you. Variables and constants are used to store and refer to values by an identifying name. As their name suggests, the value of a variable is variable, and its value can be changed, whereas a constant value cannot be changed once it is set. You use constants whenever you want to store a value which does not change, whereas you use a variable when you need to assign a value multiple times within the same scope. A good example for a constant is a key for a dictionary which will never change at runtime, whereas a good example for a variable could be a counter which gets incremented each time the user presses a button. In Swift, constants as well as variables can basically store any value you can imagine. It can be a type like a number or a text, but it can also be a more complex value like a tuple or even a closure. If you don't know what that is, don't worry, we will cover it in another tutorial. Swift also introduced the concept of optionals, and unlike other programming languages, in Swift every type can be an optional, not only classes. Optionals are exactly what their name suggests, optional. That means that there can be a value stored in a variable or a constant, or there can be no value. It is up to you to make sure that there is a value if you want to use it. This gives you a lot of advantages, mainly type safety. Type safety makes sure that you always know with what kind of data you are dealing, and it reduces the amount of possible errors as early as possible in the development process. For example, you can't pass a number into a closure which expects a text, and it also forces you to pass in a non-nil value when your closure does not allow you to pass in an optional type. Contrary to optionals, non-optional variables or constants can never be nil, and you can always be sure that there is a value you can work with. Optionals might be nil, and you must write your code so that you can deal with these cases. Using constants and variables consists of two things. First, you have to declare your variable or constant using the var keyword for variables and the let keyword for constants. Secondly, you have to assign a value using the equals operator. Trying to access a variable which value you have never set will result in an error. If you assign a value in the same line where you declare your variable, then Swift will inherit its type and there is no necessity for type annotation. If you want to declare your variable or constant and assign a value at a later point in time, you must tell the compiler which type it should use. You do this by using a colon after the name of the variable or constant and then providing the type. If you want to make your variable an optional, you also have to add a question mark or an exclamation mark. The difference between the question mark and the exclamation mark is in how you can use your variable or constant later on. If you declare your variable with a question mark, you always need to unwrap it by yourself or force the unwrapping by putting an exclamation mark behind it, if you want to access the value. But be careful, trying to force unwrapping a nil value will result in an error. If your variable or constant was declared with an exclamation mark, or if you put an exclamation mark behind an optional variable or constant, you are telling the compiler that you are sure that there is a value in it. If there is a nil value in it at runtime, your application will crash, so make sure there really is a value if you use the exclamation mark. This is called forced unwrapping. Finally, here are some tips and tricks as well as some of the best practices. In Swift, we usually use camel casing as the naming convention for variables and constants. That means that variables and constants start with a lowercase, and if the name consists of multiple words, each of the following words starts with a capital letter. In Swift, we have a lot of freedom when it comes to the characters you can use in naming your variables and constants. You basically can use almost any official Unicode character, besides white spaces, mathematical symbols, arrows, private use or invalid Unicode points, as well as line and box drawing characters. Also, names must not start with a number, but they can contain numbers if you wish. To keep your code clean and readable, you should not make extensive use of emojis and other Unicode characters though. The best practice is to use meaningful, descriptive English terms to name variables and constants so that other developers can easily pick up your code and immediately understand what you are doing. This is especially important when working in teams. If you want, you can declare multiple variables or constants in the same line by separating them with a comma. If you do so without assigning any values, you must provide a type via type annotation. You also can assign values inline, but if you wish to do so, you must do it for all of them. Besides that, you are free to mix the types as you like. Just make sure that you either assign a value directly or use type annotation to tell the compiler which type you want to use. That's it for today. If you like this video, please hit the like button and subscribe to my channel for more awesome dev tutorials in the future. Feel free to leave me a comment and I will see you next time.